A millionaire catches his maid secretly eating leftovers and makes a decision. Instead of firing her, he follows and discovers a reality he never dared to face. Her hunger exposed the useless luxury of his life, surrounded by glass and silence. The next day, he tears up contracts, confronts partners, and changes everything, starting with his own guilt. On Park Avenue, between skyscrapers that challenge the New York City sky, Henry Middleton's penthouse gleams like a beacon of success. At 34 heir to Middleton Technologies, he gazes at the city that never sleeps through the windows of the 42nd floor. The apartment, designed by a renowned architect, is a perfect composition of glass, concrete, and silence. So much silence. The digital clock reads 4:38 a.m. Henry can't sleep. He never can, really. Ever since he took over the company after his father's passing, sleep has become a luxury he can't afford. In just 5 years, he transformed the traditional electronic components factory into a tech giant, with apps, artificial intelligence systems, and solutions that put the United States on the map of global innovation. On his laptop screen, the numbers never stop climbing. The company's market value doubled in the last quarter. The stock is in constant ascent. Everything is perfect, flawless, like the apartment he inhabits but has never managed to turn into a home. Mrs. Joe, as everyone calls her, has worked for Henry for 2 years. Originally from a small town in Louisiana, she came to New York more than 2 decades ago. She was hired through a high-end domestic agency, recommended by executives who praised her discretion. And discreet she is, she moves through the apartment like a shadow. She prepares his meals, organizes his clothes, keeps every inch impeccable, and rarely crosses her employer's path, exactly as he prefers. "Will you be needing anything else, sir?" She always asks before leaving at 7 p.m. sharp. "No, thank you." "See you tomorrow," he replies without looking up from his screen. It's a perfect arrangement. No complications, no intimacy. Henry grew up believing that professional relationships should remain professional. His father taught him that as a fundamental lesson. People are not your friends, Henry, they are resources. You pay, they work. That's how it works. If you want friends, buy a dog. Henry doesn't have a dog. He doesn't have plants. He doesn't have photos on the wall. Only diplomas, certifications, and a single picture with his father on his graduation day. On the rare occasions when women visit, they comment on the coldness of the place. It looks like a 5-star hotel, they say. Henry takes it as a compliment. On a cold June pre-dawn, a dry throat wakes him from a restless doze in front of the computer. He walks to the kitchen without turning on the lights. The cold marble floor under his bare feet is a strangely comforting sensation. Real. Tangible. As he opens the refrigerator, its blue light floods the immaculate kitchen. And then he sees her, Mrs. Joe kneeling before the open fridge, eating directly from a pot with her hands. A spoon lies beside her, untouched. There is something primitive, visceral about the scene, something that freezes him completely. She doesn't notice him at first. She continues eating, with a voracity Henry never imagined existed in that always so composed woman. There is hunger there, not just physical. When she finally notices his presence, Mrs. Joe nearly drops the pot. Her eyes wide reflect the blue of the refrigerator. There is fear there, and shame, a deep shame that Henry recognizes, even though he has never felt it. "I'm so sorry, sir. I was just—" She tries to stand up, wipe her hands on her clothes, readjust her posture all at once. Henry remains motionless. He wants to say something, but the words won't come. That's as if he's seeing Mrs. Joe for the first time. Not the efficient, invisible employee, but a woman. A real person with hunger and needs he had never considered. "It's okay," he finally murmurs, taking a step back. "Can I get you something, sir? Some tea?" she asks, already recovering her servile posture. "No, you don't have to." He returns to his office without the water he came for. He tries to get back to work, but the image persists. Mrs. Joe kneeling, eating leftovers as if it were a secret, as if it was something she shouldn't be doing. In her own home, no, not her home, his home where she only works. For the first time in years, Henry questions something in his perfectly organized life. Why would Mrs. Joe be eating like that? Doesn't she take food home every day? In Tupperware containers he himself had ordered, a suggestion from the Human Resources Department to improve the company's image. Why eat in secret in the middle of the night? Even more disturbing, why was she still there at that hour? Her shift ends at 7 p.m. It always has. Sleep won't come anymore. Work doesn't flow either. Something broke that night. A first fissure in the immaculate edifice Henry had built for himself. The next morning, as he goes down to the garage, he notices the driver's car. But Mrs. Joe isn't there waiting to say goodbye as usual. Her absence bothers him more than it should. On the way to the company, located in a corporate complex in Hudson Yards, Henry finds himself thinking about her wrinkled hands, the speed with which she ate, the fear in her eyes. "Is everything all right, sir?" asks Josiah, his driver for almost 10 years. "Yes, just tired," he replies automatically. At the company, everything proceeds as usual. Meetings, spreadsheets, strategic decisions. Middleton Technologies is about to launch a new payment system that promises to revolutionize the market. The investors are euphoric. The marketing team is already preparing the billion-dollar campaign. But Henry is distant. In presentations, he nods, asks automatic questions, signs documents without reading them. His thoughts remain in the blue-lit kitchen. "Are you okay, sir?" asks Deborah, his assistant, at the end of the day. "I am. Why?" "You agreed with two completely opposite ideas in less than 10 minutes today." The marketing people were confused. Henry sighs. He runs his hands over his face. He feels the stubble, his eyes burning. "I'm just tired." Reschedule the meeting for tomorrow. Returning to the apartment earlier than usual, he finds Mrs. Joe finishing up in the kitchen. She avoids his gaze. He notices her deep dark circles, her dry hands, her defensive posture. "Mrs. Joe," he calls, making her startle. "Yes, sir?" "Do you sleep here?" The question throws her off. Her eyes finally meet his, a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "Sometimes, sir. When it gets too late. You authorized me to use the service room, remember?" Henry doesn't remember. It must have been something he signed without paying attention, like so many other documents in his life. "And why do you stay so late?" She hesitates. She wrings the dishcloth between her fingers. "It's just that I clean everything after you go to sleep, so I don't disturb you. But my bedroom is on the other side of the apartment, so I wouldn't even hear you." Mrs. Joe looks down again. "We learn not to bother people, sir. To exist only where we're not in the way." The sentence, spoken with such simplicity, hits Henry like a punch to the gut. Short, direct, devastating in its honesty. He has never felt so uncomfortable in his own home. That night, as he tries once more to work, he hears sounds coming from the kitchen. Silently, he walks over. Mrs. Joe is sitting on the floor, eating again. This time it seems to be soup. The oven is still on, its orange light illuminating her tired face. She's seeking warmth, he realizes, warmth in more than one sense. "Mrs. Joe," Henry calls her softly, this time not intending to startle her. She stands up quickly, spilling a few drops of soup on the immaculate floor. Her eyes show the same panic as the night before. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just about to clean it all up." "Don't worry about it," he says, entering the kitchen. For the first time, he truly looks at her. The grey hair pulled back in a severe bun. The hands marked by work. The impeccable uniform, but visibly worn at the cuffs. "Are you hungry?" The question seems to disconcert her even more. "No, sir. I was just..." She searches for an excuse, but gives up. "Yes, I was a little hungry." "Why don't you eat during the day?" Henry asks, pulling out a chair and sitting at the kitchen table. Unfamiliar territory for him, who always takes his meals at the office or in restaurants. Mrs. Joe remains standing, uncomfortable. "I do eat. But sometimes..." She hesitates, her eyes fixed on the floor. "You can sit." He gestures to the chair across from him. "Please." Reluctantly, she obeys. Her back doesn't touch the chair's backrest, as if she's ready to stand up at any moment. "Sometimes what?" Henry insists. "Sometimes I save a little of the food to take with me. For your grandchildren," he ventures, vaguely remembering having heard something about her having grandchildren. Mrs. Joe's face lights up for an instant. "Yes, I have 3. Marcus, who's 17, Peter, who's 10, and Maria, who's 7. Henry notices how her voice changes when she speaks of them. "There's life there, passion, and who takes care of them while you work here?" "Marcus looks after the little ones after school. He's very responsible. Their father doesn't..." Henry lets the question hang in the air, realizing too late that he might be treading on delicate ground. Mrs. Joe's face closes up. My son passed away 5 years ago. A construction accident. She makes the sign of the cross. Since then, it's just me for my grandkids. Henry swallows hard. 5 years, the same amount of time since he took over the company. While he was building his empire, this woman was rebuilding her shattered life. I'm so sorry, he says, and for the first time in years, he truly feels something genuine for another person. And the children's mother? She left after what happened. Said she couldn't handle it. Mrs. Joe wipes away a furtive tear with the sleeve of her uniform. But it's all right. God will provide. Henry had never been religious. He always believed that a man makes his own destiny. But there, faced with the unshakable faith of this woman who had lost so much and kept going, he questions himself. Do you work in other houses too? He asks, remembering she mentioned leaving late. Yes, sir. In the morning, I'm at Mrs. Carmen's house on the Upper East Side. Then I come here, and on weekends I clean at Mrs. Lucy's building in Greenwich Village. Henry does the math mentally. That's at least 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And when do you rest? Mrs. Joe smiles for the first time, a tired but genuine smile. Sunday afternoons when I take the children to the park. A silence settles between them. Henry realizes how little he knows about the lives of the people around him. The people who serve his coffee, who clean his office, who drive his car. Invisible until now. Sir, if you don't mind, I need to finish cleaning. I have to wake up early tomorrow. Of course, he stands up. But Mrs. Joe, you don't have to wait for me to go to sleep to clean. And you can eat whenever you want at the table. This house is also yours while you're here. She nods, but Henry knows his words haven't changed anything. There are patterns established over decades that aren't broken with one conversation. That night, as he lies in bed, Henry can't sleep. Images from his own childhood assail him. His mother, Lucy Middleton, always taking care of the house while his father worked, always perfect, always discreet, and always invisible in important decisions. She died at 49 from an aneurysm while preparing dinner to host investors. Henry was only 14. His father never mentioned her name again. He threw himself into work with even more fervor, turning the small factory into a medium-sized company, leaving his son with the mission of elevating it to corporate status. There's no time for grieving. Henry just moved forward, and he did. He graduated from MIT with a degree in engineering, got an MBA in the States, worked at Silicon Valley startups before returning to the US to take over the company after his father's departure 3 years ago. He never cried, never went to therapy, never stopped to think about what he really wanted beyond growing the company's numbers. Until now. The next morning, Henry wakes up to the smell of coffee. Not the usual coffee, served in a porcelain cup next to his laptop. This one is stronger, more present. In the kitchen, he finds Mrs. Joe preparing grits. Good morning, sir. I thought I'd make something different today. Grits with cheddar cheese. A recipe from back home. Henry senses her attempt to establish some normalcy after the uncomfortable conversations of the previous night. Smells good, he comments. Sitting at the kitchen table again, a habit that seems to be forming. Where are you from again? Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, home of the biggest Mardi Gras in the world, she replies with a touch of pride in her voice. Came to New York in 1998 with my husband. He's gone too. A stroke. Henry notices how she avoids the word death. They share that characteristic, he realizes. Ever think of going back? Mrs. Joe places the steaming bowl of grits in front of him. The aroma is comforting. I think about it every day, but the grandkids are New Yorkers now. They go to school here. And there's no work for an old woman like me back there. You're not old, Henry says, realizing he doesn't actually know how old she is. I'm 58, sir. But I feel 80. She smiles sadly, turning back to the stove. Henry's phone rings. It's Deborah, reminding him of the meeting with investors in an hour. Real-life calling. I have to go, he says, standing up after devouring the grits. It was truly delicious. Thank you for breakfast. You're welcome, sir. Have a good day. In the elevator, Henry realizes it's the first time in years he has thanked Mrs. Joe for something specific she did. Usually it's just an automatic thank you, without really considering the work involved. The day at the company is chaotic. The investor meeting runs longer than expected. The payment system has glitches that need to be fixed before launch. The legal department warns of potential issues with the Federal Reserve. Henry should be 100% focused, but he's not. During the presentation of financial projection charts, he watches the receptionist, Joanna, serve coffee to the executives. He'd never noticed her name before. She moves discreetly around the room like Mrs. Joe in his apartment, invisible. At lunch in the company cafeteria, he notices the cleaning staff eating at a separate table. In uniform, talking quietly, as if they don't want to be noticed. The security guard at the entrance, Albert according to his name tag, eats alone reading a book. The Jungle, by Upton Sinclair, Henry manages to read on the cover, a classic work on social inequality in early 20th century America. The irony doesn't escape him. "You're very distracted today," comments Sandra Miles, the CFO and Henry's right hand. "Is it the stress of the launch?" "Maybe," he replies, turning his attention back to his barely touched plate. "Sandra, do you know how many people work in this building? Not just for Middleton, but in outsourced services too." The question surprises her. "I don't know for sure. The company has 348 direct employees. With contractors, it must be over 500. Why?" "Just curious," Henry replies. "Do you know any of them?" "The contractors, I mean." Sandra frowns. "Well, I know Anthony, the cleaning supervisor, and Marcia, from security. But not personally, just from handling administrative issues." "I see," Henry murmurs, realizing he's not the only one living in a bubble. Back in his office, on the top floor of the building, with a view of the New York skyline, Henry finds himself unable to concentrate. He opens the company's HR system and starts browsing through employee information. Salaries, benefits, overtime policies. Everything seems to be within market standards, maybe even a little above. But something bothers him. In the photos from the last corporate event, he only sees the faces of executives, engineers, developers. No operational staff, as if they weren't part of the same company. At the end of the day, instead of returning home, Henry asks Josiah to take him to a different address. "Where are we going, sir?" asks the driver, surprised by the change in routine. "Mott Haven, the Bronx," Henry replies, reading the address he found in Mrs. Joe's registration file. "Do you know it?" "I do, sir. It's not too far from here, but it's, well, different from what you're used to." Josiah's tone is cautious, almost protective. Henry realizes that despite working for him for 10 years, he knows as little about his driver as he does about Mrs. Joe. "Do you live around there, Josiah?" "No, sir. I live in Queens. But I've driven to the Bronx many times when I was a cab driver." Another detail Henry didn't know. Josiah had been a cab driver before. "And you're sure you want to go there at this hour?" "It's getting dark, I'm sure. I'm visiting someone." As the luxury car moves through the city, Henry watches the gradual transformation of the urban landscape. The glass-fronted buildings give way to simpler constructions. The perfect asphalt becomes uneven. The number of people on the streets increases. The streets of Mott Haven are full of life. Kids play ball on a makeshift field. Men chat in front of modest bars. Women carry grocery bags. Loud music comes from a house, a mix of hip-hop and R&B. The smell of street-cart hot dogs hangs in the air. It's a world completely different from the one Henry knows. Different, but alive, pulsating. "We're here, sir," Josiah announces, stopping in front of a narrow street where the car can barely pass. "It's on this street. Number 47. Henry hesitates before getting out. The luxury vehicle is already attracting curious glances. "Should I wait, sir? Please. I don't know how long I'll be." The street is steep, with simple houses packed close together. Most are unadorned brick, but some are painted in vibrant colors, yellow, pink, turquoise. Henry walks carefully, looking at the numbers on the doors. A few children follow him, curious about his presence. Number 47 is a modest 2-story row house with a small external staircase leading to the second floor. It has bars on the windows, but they are decorated with potted plants. Someone cultivates ferns and snake plants with care. Henry takes a deep breath before knocking on the door. He hears voices inside, a television on. Footsteps approach. "Who is it?" asks a young male voice. Henry hesitates. "I'm Mrs. Joe's employer, Henry Middleton." A silence. Then the sound of several locks being undone. The door opens a crack, and a young man of about 17 stares at him with a suspicious expression. He has the same eyes as Mrs. Joe. My grandma's not here. She works late. I know. I came to see how you all are doing. May I come in? The young man, Marcus, Henry presumes, hesitates. He looks back as if consulting someone, then opens the door completely. Sure, but is everything okay? Did something happen to Grandma? No. She's fine, Henry replies quickly, sensing the boy's concern. I just wanted to meet you. The living room is small but impeccably clean. A worn sofa occupies the main wall, in front of an old television. On the wall's family photos, a younger Mrs. Joe with a serious-looking man, her late husband, Henry assumes. Her son, a smiling young man wearing a construction helmet. Marcus with his younger siblings. 2 children watch him, hiding behind the sofa. The girl with colorful braids holds a notebook. The boy has a toy car in his hand. Are these your siblings? Henry asks Marcus, trying to be friendly. They are. Maria and Peter, he replies, still cautious. Come here, guys. It's Grandma's boss. The children approach timidly. Maria, the braver one, extends her hand. Are you rich? She asks directly with the brutal honesty of children. Henry can't help but smile. I am. Then why did you come here? She continues, ignoring her older brother's disapproving look. Maria! Don't be rude, Marcus scolds her. It's okay, Henry says. That's a good question. I came because... He hesitates himself, not knowing the exact answer. Because I wanted to meet Mrs. Joe's family. She talks a lot about you. It's a half-truth. Mrs. Joe had spoken of her grandchildren only once, but with such affection that it felt like a years-long conversation. Would you like some coffee? Marcus offers, finally giving in to the hospitality he likely learned from his grandmother. I would, thank you. While Marcus goes to the kitchen, Henry sits on the sofa. Peter, the youngest, approaches cautiously, showing him the toy car. Look, I made it. It's not a store-bought toy. It's a handmade creation, made from soda cans, bottle caps for wheels, and barbecue skewers for axles. The craftsmanship is surprisingly good for a 10-year-old. You made this? It's incredible. Henry examines the car with genuine interest. How did you bend the can like that? With pliers. Marcus taught me. He knows how to make all sorts of things. Maria approaches too, opening her notebook. I got an A+ in math, want to see? The pages are filled with equations solved in neat handwriting. Henry flips through, impressed. You like math? I love it. I want to be an engineer when I grow up. Marcus returns with a cup of coffee and sits in the chair across from the sofa. He watches the interaction with his siblings with a more relaxed expression. They're smart, he comments with pride. Maria is top of her class, and Peter can fix anything. The other day he fixed the fan that even our neighbor, who's a technician, couldn't. And you, Marcus, what do you like to do? Henry asks, sipping the coffee. It's strong and sweet, just like Mrs. Joe makes it. The young man hesitates as if the question is unexpected. I like technology, computers. He points to an old laptop on the table. I fix computers for the neighbors. Taught myself watching videos. Henry looks at the laptop. It's an outdated model, probably refurbished, but well cared for. Do you want to work with that? I want to go to college for computer science. I'm trying to get a scholarship. He runs a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture. But it's not easy. Even with a scholarship, there are books, transportation, time. Henry understands what isn't being said. Marcus has to help at home, take care of his siblings while his grandmother works. The dream of college seems distant. Your grandmother said you look after the little ones. Yeah, ever since Mom left. There's a hardness in Marcus's voice when he mentions his mother. It wasn't easy at first, but we help each other out. I study at night when Grandma's home. The conversation flows more easily now. Peter shows off other toys he has created. Maria talks about school, her teachers, her dreams of being an engineer to build houses that don't fall down. Marcus talks about his tech projects, the odd jobs he does, his desire to improve his family's life. Henry is surprised by the young man's maturity. At 17, Marcus already carries responsibilities that many adults don't face, and yet there's hope in his eyes. A determination that Henry recognizes. Is your computer working well? He asks, noticing that Marcus occasionally glances at the laptop as if checking it's still there. So. It's slow, the battery doesn't last long. But it does what I need it to. Henry feels an impulse to offer him a new one right there, but he holds back. He doesn't want to seem condescending. "If you need help with your studies, materials, anything," he begins, but is interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Mrs. Joe enters carrying grocery bags. Upon seeing Henry sitting on her sofa with her grandchildren, she freezes at the entrance. Her eyes widen in shock. "Mr. Henry, what are you—" "Hi, Grandma." Maria runs to hug her. "Your boss came to visit us. He's nice." Mrs. Joe looks from Henry to Marcus, confused. "It's okay, Grandma," her eldest grandson assures her, taking the bags from her hands. "Mr. Henry just came to meet us." Henry stands up, suddenly aware of the invasion his presence represents. This is Mrs. Joe's sanctuary, the only place where she doesn't have to be invisible. "I'm sorry for showing up like this." "Mrs. Joe, I should have called." She composes herself, smoothing out her wrinkled uniform after a long day of work. "No, it's all right. You just caught me by surprise." She looks around as if assessing what he might have seen. "The house is simple." "The house is wonderful," Henry interrupts her gently. "Your grandchildren are incredible. Maria showed me her grades. And Peter is a natural-born inventor." Mrs. Joe's tired face lights up with pride. "They are my treasure," she says simply. "Everything we do is for them." The "we" doesn't go unnoticed by Henry. Her and her son, he assumes. The son who passed away. "Sir, would you like to have dinner with us?" Marcus asks, to the surprise of both Henry and Mrs. Joe. "It's nothing fancy, but Grandma makes a gumbo that's out of this world." Henry looks at Mrs. Joe, waiting for her reaction. She seems torn between pride in her grandson's hospitality and the discomfort of having her employer in her home. "If it's no trouble," Henry replies, surprising himself. The idea of returning to his empty apartment doesn't seem appealing now. "Of course it's not." Mrs. Joe recovers her role as hostess. "Just give me a few minutes to get everything ready." "I'll help," Marcus offers, following his grandmother to the kitchen. Peter and Maria drag Henry to see more of their creations and drawings. The girl shows him a cardboard model of her school, made for a science project. The boy displays a collection of miniatures built from recycled materials. From the kitchen come the muffled sounds of conversation between Mrs. Joe and Marcus. Henry imagines they are discussing his presence there. He understands the discomfort. The worlds are inverted now. He is the intruder in her territory. When dinner is served on the small living room table, Henry is surprised by the atmosphere. There is an embroidered tablecloth on the table, simple but matching plates, organized silverware. Mrs. Joe has taken care to set the table with dignity, even in its simplicity. The gumbo is in fact delicious. Henry can't remember the last time he had a home-cooked meal like this, prepared with care, perhaps in his childhood, when his mother was still alive. After that, it was just expensive restaurants or functional meals. The conversation flows naturally. The children talk about school. Marcus talks about a computer project he's developing. Mrs. Joe, initially tense, gradually relaxes. She tells stories of Louisiana, of Mardi Gras, of Southern traditions. "Back home we didn't have much, sir, but nobody went without. Everyone helped each other. It's different here in New York. It's every man for himself." "And why did you come?" Henry asks, genuinely curious. "My husband came first to work in construction. Then he sent for us, me, our young son." Her eyes get lost in memories. The plan wasn't to stay forever. It was to save money, go back. Build a house there, but life just happens, you know? Henry understands. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. How many dreams had Mrs. Joe left behind? How many sacrifices had she made? "And you, sir? Do you have family?" she asks, surprising Henry with the role reversal. "No, I have some cousins, distant uncles, but we don't keep in touch." He hesitates. "My parents are no longer here." "It's just me." A compassionate silence settles. Mrs. Joe looks at him with something new in her eyes, no longer fear or submission, but a deep understanding. "That must be difficult," she says simply. In that moment, Henry feels a connection he never imagined possible. Two people, from completely different worlds, recognizing each other's loneliness. Mrs. Joe surrounded by family but carrying all the weight alone. He isolated in his glass tower. At the end of the night, as Henry prepares to leave, Marcus walks him to the door. "Thanks for visiting, sir," the young man says, extending his hand. My grandma has worked for you for 2 years, but this is the first time I've seen her talk about you like a real person, you know. The observation hits Henry. To Mrs. Joe, to her whole family, he was just the boss. An abstract figure, not a person. For me too, Marcus. For me too. Josiah is still waiting in the car, surprisingly patient after hours. Everything all right, sir? He asks upon seeing Henry approach. Everything's fine, Josiah. Henry gets into the car, looking one last time at the simple house with its plants in the window. Let's go home. During the drive, the city transforms again. The narrow streets give way to wide avenues. The buildings grow in height and opulence. The lights become brighter, colder. Henry looks at New York with new eyes now, a city of brutal contrasts, where worlds coexist without touching. Until now. The morning after the visit to Mrs. Joe's house brings a different kind of clarity to Henry's apartment. He wakes up early, his mind filled with images from the previous night. Peter's tin can car, Maria's math notebooks, Marcus's old laptop, the gumbo served with pride. The dignity of that family, despite all their difficulties. When he gets to the kitchen, Mrs. Joe is already making coffee. She seems nervous, as if expecting some change in their relationship after yesterday's visit. Good morning, Mrs. Joe, Henry says, sitting at the kitchen table. The act no longer feels strange. Good morning, sir, she replies, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. About yesterday. Your family is incredible, he interrupts. Your grandchildren are extraordinary. Marcus is very mature for his age. A faint smile appears on the housekeeper's face. He had to grow up fast, she says, looking down, but he has a future ahead of him. They all do. Mrs. Joe, I was thinking, Henry begins, choosing his words carefully. Marcus mentioned he's trying to get into college. I could help with that. She immediately tenses, her hands tightening on the dishcloth. That's very kind of you, sir, but we don't need charity. The word charity hits him like an insult, though he knows that wasn't her intention. It's not charity, Mrs. Joe, it's... He searches for the right words. It's recognition. Your grandson has potential. He deserves an opportunity. She looks at him, a mixture of hope and suspicion in her eyes. What kind of help are you thinking of? A scholarship. A full one. And an internship at the company if he's interested. Henry speaks firmly, already visualizing the plan. Middleton Technologies has a scholarship program, but it's usually just for the children of high-level employees. We can expand it. Mrs. Joe takes a deep breath, visibly torn. Can I think about it, sir? I need to talk to Marcus, of course. Take all the time you need. On the way to the company, Henry begins to formulate the project in his mind. It wouldn't be just for Marcus. It could be something bigger, for all the company's non-salaried employees, an initiative for inclusion and development. Upon arriving at Middleton Technologies, he asks Deborah to schedule an urgent meeting with the Human Resources and Social Responsibility departments. Is there a problem, Henry? Asks Sandra Miles, entering his office without knocking as usual. No, actually, I have an idea for a new project. Sandra sits down, interested. She and Henry had studied together at MIT, and she was one of the first people he brought into the company when he took over. They trusted each other. What project? A scholarship and training program for non-salaried employees and their families. He begins to explain, animated. Scholarships, technical mentorship, psychological support. Sandra frowns. That's unexpected. What happened to focusing on shareholders and accelerated growth? Nothing's changed. But we can do both, Henry replies, already anticipating resistance. A company is made of people, Sandra. All of them, not just the engineers and executives. Of course. She makes a vague gesture with her hand. But why now? We have the payment system launch in 2 weeks. The timing doesn't seem right for distractions. The word distractions echoes in Henry's mind. Is that how Sandra sees employee well-being? As a distraction? It's not a distraction. It's an investment, he replies with more firmness than he intended. And as for the timing, it's precisely because of the launch. I want all our employees to feel they are part of this success, that they aren't just watching from the sidelines. Sandra studies him for a few seconds, as if trying to understand what's really going on. Does this have to do with your housekeeper? Deborah mentioned you asked for her address yesterday. Henry is surprised by the observation. Nothing escapes Sandra. It has to do with opening my eyes, he replies simply. Did you know we have janitors with incomplete master's degrees working here? Receptionists who dropped out of college because they couldn't afford it? Drivers who are walking encyclopedias? And since when do you care about that? Sandra asks directly, bluntly. The question hits him. Since when, really? Since the night before last, when he saw Mrs. Joe kneeling, eating leftovers in his kitchen. Since yesterday, when he visited a family living on less than what he spends on a business dinner. Since always, he lies, holding her gaze. I just hadn't stopped to think about how to implement something concrete. The meeting with HR and social responsibility takes place 2 hours later. Henry presents his idea, a comprehensive development program for operational employees and their families. Scholarships for technical school, college, and even postgraduate studies. Professional mentorship. Psychological counseling. Microloans for small businesses. It's not charity, he emphasizes, remembering Mrs. Joe's words. It's an investment in human capital. These people are already part of Middleton. Let's truly acknowledge that. The reactions are mixed. Some are immediately enthusiastic. Others, especially older executives, show skepticism. This will cost a fortune, observes Ferdinand Gaines, the CFO, a man trusted by Henry's father. The shareholders won't like it. The cost will be less than our last advertising campaign, Henry counters, and the return in the long run will be much greater. What return? Ferdinand asks with an ironic smile. Happier employees. More skilled employees. Higher talent retention, an improved company image, strengthened communities, Henry lists, keeping his cool. And yes, Ferdinand, happier employees too, which in itself would be a good enough reason. The meeting extends for another 2 hours. In the end, Henry orders the immediate creation of a working group to structure the program. He wants it up and running within a month at most. And who will coordinate this? Asks Juliana Castro from Social Responsibility. Henry has already thought about that. I'm considering bringing someone in from the outside, someone who truly understands the needs of these people. When he returns home at the end of the day, Henry is mentally exhausted. He spent the day facing questions, doubts, veiled resistance. Even Sandra, his ally of so many years, seems suspicious of his intentions. He finds Mrs. Joe in the kitchen preparing dinner. There's a different aroma in the air, more fragrant, homey. I spoke with Marcus, sir, she says as soon as he enters, about the scholarship offer. Henry waits, saying nothing. He was very excited, but he's afraid. She stirs the contents of the pot with precise movements, afraid of not being good enough, of disappointing people, of starting to dream and then... He won't disappoint anyone, Henry interrupts her gently. I saw his potential. Mrs. Joe turns to face him with an intensity Henry has never seen before. You don't understand, sir. For people like us, dreaming is dangerous. Life teaches you from an early age that some doors are not for you to open, that it's better to accept what you have without wanting too much. But it's reality, she completes. Marcus saw his father work himself to death, doing overtime, studying at night, trying to get ahead. And in the end, what did he get? Buried with a small payout from the construction company that barely covered the casket. There is a deep pain in her voice, a pain Henry can barely comprehend. Things can be different, Mrs. Joe. They can, she admits, but they rarely are. A silence settles between them, filled only by the soft sounds of cooking. Even so, she finally continues, we'll accept your offer, because to refuse would be to deny Marcus the chance to prove me wrong. She smiles sadly. And I really want to be wrong, sir. That night, Henry works late in his home office, not on spreadsheets or company reports, but on the inclusion project. He wants it to be perfect, unassailable, something that not even the most conservative shareholders could reject. At 3 in the morning, he hears a noise in the kitchen. He knows it's Mrs. Joe, probably preparing something to take home the next day. This time he doesn't hide to watch her. He goes straight there. She is packing small portions of food into plastic containers. 5 packed lunches lined up on the counter. Good evening, Mrs. Joe, he says, announcing his presence so as not to startle her. Sir, you're still awake? She seems genuinely concerned. Are you not sleeping well? Too much work, he replies, sitting at the table. Do you always prepare so many meals? Yes, 2 for Marcus to take to work, 1 for each of the kids at school and 1 for me at my other job. You don't have to do that, you know. You can take whatever you want from the pantry. It doesn't have to be just the leftovers. Mrs. Joe continues packing without looking at him. It's a habit, sir. I learned not to waste. And I learned not to take what wasn't offered to me. Henry realizes that, despite his earlier words, he had never actually offered her the food. He just assumed she would know she could take what she wanted. From now on, everything is officially offered, he says with a smile. And Mrs. Joe, I have a proposal for you too. She looks up, surprised. For me? I'm creating a program at the company. For employees like you and their families. Scholarships support development. He pauses. And I want you to coordinate it. Mrs. Joe nearly drops the container she was holding. Me? But, sir, I don't have the education for that. I don't know anything about business, You have something more important. You have experience. You know exactly what these families need because you live it every day. Henry leans forward. No executive with an MBA could do this better than you. She remains silent, processing the proposal. Henry can see the fear in her eyes, but also something else. A spark of possibility. Can I think about it? Of course. When Henry finally goes to bed just before dawn, he feels a strange lightness, as if he had removed a weight he had been carrying for so long he no longer noticed it. He falls asleep quickly, and for the first time in years doesn't have nightmares about falling charts or plummeting stocks. He dreams instead of his mother cooking, and of Marcus's proud smile as he shows off his first working computer program. The next day at the company, resistance to the project grows. Ferdinand Gaines calls an emergency meeting with the main shareholders. Some are already questioning Henry's emotional stability. He's under too much pressure, they say. Maybe he needs a leave of absence. Sandra warns him about the rumors. They're saying you've lost your mind. Henry, that you're throwing money away on charity projects while we should be focused on the launch. Let them talk, Henry replies, with a calmness that surprises even himself. When they see the results, they'll understand. But what if they don't? Sandra insists. Ferdinand is maneuvering against you. I've heard conversations. What conversations? She hesitates, uncomfortable. They're considering proposing to the board that you take a temporary leave. For stress. The news of a possible leave of absence doesn't surprise Henry as much as it should. A part of him had expected resistance. What surprises him is the speed with which the system turns against any change to the status quo. When is the board meeting? He asks Sandra. On Friday. Ferdinand managed to convince Edward Castillo to support him. Edward Castillo, the largest individual shareholder in Middleton Technologies after Henry himself, a longtime friend of his father. Henry's godfather technically, though he never played the role beyond the baptism ceremony. I see. Henry keeps his voice calm, despite the sense of betrayal that washes over him. And what's your position, Sandra? She briefly averts her gaze, a rare gesture for someone always so direct. You know I've always supported you, Henry, but this project, it's a huge deviation from our strategy. The timing couldn't be worse. If you'd at least waited until after the launch. There's no time to waste, Henry responds firmly. Every day we delay is another day that people like Marcus go without an opportunity. Another day we waste potential. Sandra sighs, clearly torn. It's exactly that kind of statement they're using against you, saying you're too emotional, that you've lost your objectivity. And since when is having emotions incompatible with good business? Henry retorts. It was precisely that cold objectivity that nearly killed my father from stress at 60, that made my mother live in his shadow, never realizing her own dreams. Sandra looks at him in surprise. Henry rarely talks about his parents, especially his mother. I didn't know you felt that way about your father. Neither did I, Henry admits, but I do now. And I don't want to repeat those mistakes. The board meeting on Friday is tense. Ferdinand Gaines presents a detailed report on the financial risks of the program proposed by Henry. Edward Castillo, sitting at the opposite head of the table, nods gravely at each point. We are not an NGO, Ferdinand concludes. We are a technology company, with a responsibility to our shareholders. This project could cost up to $15 million a year, with no clear return. Meanwhile, the payment system launch has critical bugs that are still unresolved. It's a matter of priorities. Henry listens patiently. When it's his turn to speak, he stands up calmly. I appreciate your concern for our finances, Ferdinand. You've always been a judicious manager. He smiles slightly. However, your report has fundamental flaws. With surgical precision, Henry dismantles the report, exposing calculation errors and flawed assumptions. The real cost would be about half of what was estimated. And as for the return, Henry presents examples of companies that implemented similar programs and saw significant increases in productivity, reduced turnover, and a strengthened brand. Furthermore, he continues, the bugs in the payment system have already been fixed. The team worked through the night. The final report has been in your inboxes since 7 a.m. this morning. Ferdinand's expression darkens. Edward Castillo maintains a neutral expression, but his eyes reveal a reassessment. Even so, Henry, Edward intervenes, speaking for the first time. The timing of this project is questionable. Why now? What changed so suddenly? The question hangs in the air. Henry knows this is the crucial moment. He could present more numbers, more statistics, but he decides on a different path. What changed was that I finally saw something that was right in front of me. His voice is calm but firm. 3 nights ago, I found my housekeeper kneeling in my kitchen, eating leftovers directly from the pot, afraid of being discovered. An uncomfortable silence falls over the room. A woman who has worked for me for 2 years, who keeps my house in order. Who cooks my meals? And I never truly saw her. I never asked about her life, her struggles. I never cared to know that she's raising 3 grandchildren alone since she lost her son. Henry looks directly at Edward. My father built this company believing that success was measured only by numbers, Edward. You know that better than anyone. You were his friend. You saw the price he paid, that everyone around him paid. Edward looks away, visibly uncomfortable. I'm not proposing we abandon profit or technical excellence. I'm proposing we balance it with humanity, with real recognition of the people who make this company run. Henry pauses. If that's madness, then I suggest you vote for my removal immediately. The silence that follows is broken by Sandra. I think we deserve the opportunity to see this project implemented before any drastic decisions. She looks at Ferdinand with determination. The initial cost can be absorbed by my department if that's a concern. The discussion extends for another 2 hours. In the end, the board votes to continue the project, but with strict monitoring and monthly progress reports. Henry remains in his position, but is temporarily removed from strategic decisions regarding the payment system launch. It's a partial victory, one that leaves Henry exhausted. Arriving home that night, the apartment is quiet. Mrs. Joe has already left, leaving dinner ready and a note on the fridge. Sir, I've thought more about your proposal. If it still stands, I accept. Signed, Josephine Maria da Silva. Henry smiles, feeling a renewed sense of energy. At least one person trusts his vision. The following days are intense. During the day, Henry works on structuring the program, now officially named Middleton Connects. At night, he discusses the details with Mrs. Joe, listening to her ideas and perspectives. What people like me need most, sir, is a real chance and respect, she says one evening, as they discuss the program. It's no use offering a scholarship if the person doesn't have time to study, because they need 3 jobs to survive. And how do we solve that? Henry asks, taking notes. Scholarships that include a living stipend, flexible hours, daycare for the mothers, Mrs. Joe lists with a clarity that surprises Henry, and respect. No making the person feel like a charity case. They have to feel like they deserve to be there. The program begins to take shape. Marcus is one of the first beneficiaries, receiving a full scholarship for computer science and an internship in the company's development department. On Marcus's first day as an intern, Henry makes a point of introducing him to the team personally. The young man, nervous in his first suit, bought for the occasion, impresses the developers with his pertinent questions and self-taught knowledge. I think we've found a diamond in the rough, comments Rodrigo Bueno, the development team lead, after the first week. The kid has impressive logical reasoning. He's already helping to solve some bugs. It's not just Marcus who flourishes. Mrs. Joe, initially hesitant in her new role, reveals a surprising ability to connect with the non-salaried employees. They trust her, open up to her, share needs they would never have revealed to an HR executive. With her guidance, The program is refined to meet real needs: tutoring for employees' children, a mobile dental clinic that visits distant communities, financial literacy courses, flexible schedules for those who study. Slowly, the company culture begins to change. Janitors are called by name, drivers participate in feedback meetings, receptionists receive basic tech training. It's not a process without bumps. There's resistance from middle managers, discomfort from some executives who don't know how to handle the new dynamic. Deprecating comments are made in hallways. Jokes about the maid who became an executive circulate in private WhatsApp groups. Ferdinand Gaines remains the most vocal critic, questioning every cent invested in the program, demanding impossible metrics to be met in the short term. He won't give up, warns Sandra, now a firm ally of Henry in this cause. He's convinced you're ruining your father's legacy. My father built a good company, Henry replies. I'm trying to build a great one. There's a difference. The launch of the payment system, even without Henry's direct involvement, is a success. The stock soars, investors are satisfied. Ferdinand is forced to temporarily retreat in his criticism. But the real test comes 2 months after the program's start, when a story from a community newspaper in the Bronx goes viral on social media. The article tells the story of Marcus, the grandson of a housekeeper, now an intern at one of the country's largest tech companies, thanks to an inclusion program. The report includes a photo a passenger took on the subway. Henry Middleton, billionaire CEO, talking animatedly with Marcus and 2 other young people from the program, all returning together from a tech fair. The image causes a stir. Some praise the initiative, calling Henry a visionary, an example of a socially responsible entrepreneur. Others are skeptical, accusing him of cheap social marketing, of using stories of overcoming adversity to promote the company. The controversy reaches its peak when a business magazine publishes a cover story questioning Henry Middleton, social visionary or marketing strategist. The article exposes the division on the board, the internal criticism, the doubts about the program's financial sustainability. Ferdinand Gaines is quoted several times, always as an anonymous source close to the board. This is a declaration of war, Sandra says, throwing the magazine on Henry's desk. Ferdinand is using the press to destabilize you. Henry reads the article calmly. He's not surprised by the content, but the public exposure of the internal division is dangerous. Investors don't like uncertainty. As predicted, Middleton's stock begins to fluctuate. Rumors of management instability circulate in the market. Analysts question whether the social detour will harm long-term results. Edward Castillo requests a new board meeting. This time the agenda is clear: the future of Henry's management. The meeting is even more tense than the previous one. Edward gets straight to the point. The instability is affecting market confidence, Henry. We need a definitive solution. What solution do you suggest? Henry asks, already anticipating the answer. 2 options. Either you return to the company's traditional focus, ending or at least drastically reducing this program, or we consider a leadership transition. Ferdinand doesn't hide his satisfied smile. Other board members look uncomfortable, but don't speak out against it. Sandra tries to intervene. It's premature to judge the program. The initial indicators are positive. Productivity in operational areas has increased by 12% since the beginning. Insufficient numbers, Ferdinand retorts. The cost of market instability already outweighs any productivity gains. Henry listens to everything in silence. When he finally speaks, his voice is serene. I built this company to where it is today. I turned a components manufacturer into a tech giant. I quadrupled the market value in 5 years. He looks at each face around the table. I did all of that following the traditional playbook. Numbers over people. Results over purpose. He stands up slowly. I will not go back to that model. If the board considers my vision to be incompatible with the company's future, I am prepared to accept the consequences. The silence that follows is broken by Edward. No one is questioning your results, Henry. Just the timing and scale of this transformation. The transformation either happens completely or it doesn't happen at all. Henry maintains his firmness. This isn't a marketing project we can turn on and off at our convenience. These are real lives. The discussion continues for hours. In the end, the board reaches a compromise. Henry remains as CEO, but the program will be re-evaluated by an independent committee. In the meantime, no new social initiatives will be implemented without prior board approval. It's a defeat disguised as a draw. Henry knows the independent committee will be composed of people aligned with Ferdinand. The program will be gradually hollowed out, reduced to a public relations initiative without real substance. Leaving the company building, Henry feels profoundly tired. It's not just physical fatigue, but an exhaustion of the soul. As if he had run a marathon only to find the finish line had been moved a few more miles away. When he arrives home, he doesn't find the usual silence. There's music coming from the kitchen, a soft samba, almost a whisper, and a smell he doesn't immediately recognize. Mrs. Joe is baking something in the oven. When she sees him, her smile fades. "You look worn out, sir." Henry doesn't answer right away. He sits down in a kitchen chair, loosening his tie. "Tough days at work, Mrs. Joe." She nods as if she understands perfectly and places a cup of tea in front of him. "Not coffee, but tea, with lemon balm she brought from her own home. To calm you," she explains. "My grandmother always said there's no problem that can withstand a good night's sleep after a cup of lemon balm tea." Henry smiles weakly, thanking her with a gesture. Mrs. Joe returns to the oven, from which she pulls out what looks like a cake. "I made cornbread. Marcus loves it. He's coming for dinner tonight, if you don't mind." "Of course I don't mind," Henry replies, genuinely happy at the prospect of company. It would be great to talk to him. "He has some news," Mrs. Joe smiles with evident pride. "But I'll let him tell you himself. The lemon balm tea works its magic." Henry feels the tension gradually leaving his body. The aroma of the cornbread fills the kitchen, bringing a sense of comfort he hadn't experienced since childhood. "Sometimes I think I'm trying to change things that can't be changed," Henry confesses, surprising himself with his frankness. "Systems that are bigger than any one person." Mrs. Joe listens as she sets the table for dinner. Not with the formality of an employee preparing for an event, but with the naturalness of someone in her own home, hosting a friend. "You know, sir, when I came to New York, I thought I'd never adapt," she says, placing simple but well-arranged plates on the table. "Everything was too big, too fast, too cold. I thought about going back many times. Why didn't you?" "Because little by little I started changing small things. A plant here, a southern recipe there, a friendship with a neighbor." She smiles, arranging the silverware. "We don't change the world, sir. We change our little piece of it. And that's already a lot." The doorbell rings. It's Marcus, accompanied by Maria and Peter. The children run to hug their grandmother, filling the silent apartment with voices and laughter. "Mr. Henry," Maria exclaims upon seeing him, without the shyness of their first meeting. "Look what I won at school." She shows him a medal for excellence in mathematics. Her eyes shine with pride. "First place in the whole school." Peter adds, as proud as if it were his own achievement. "That's incredible, Maria." Henry praises her, genuinely impressed. "What did you do to win?" "I solved all the problems in the math competition. Even the high school ones," she explains, showing off the medal. "The teacher said she'd never seen anyone my age do that." Marcus watches the scene with a smile before extending his hand to Henry. "Good evening, sir. Hope you don't mind the invasion." "Not at all, it's a pleasure," Henry replies sincerely. "Mrs. Joe mentioned you have some news?" The young man exchanges a knowing look with his grandmother. "I do. Shall we have dinner first?" Dinner is simple but delicious. Black-eyed peas with bacon, chicken and sausage gumbo, cornbread for dessert. The kitchen table, usually empty except for Henry's solitary presence, is now surrounded by life and conversation. Peter talks about a science project he's developing, an automatic irrigation system made from recycled materials. Maria can't stop talking about her advanced science tutoring, funded by the Middleton program. Marcus, more reserved, watches everything with a constant smile. Henry notices how he seems more confident, more comfortable in his own skin compared to the nervous young man he met months ago. "So, Marcus, what's the big news?" Henry asks when dinner is over, and the children are helping Mrs. Joe clear the table. Marcus takes a deep breath. "I managed to develop an app, sir, with help from the guys on the programming team. It's a system that connects gig workers to job opportunities." "What do you mean?" "It's like an Uber, but for services. Housekeepers, construction workers, painters, electricians. People who have skills but have trouble finding clients. Marcus speaks with growing enthusiasm. The app runs background checks, ensures quality, facilitates secure payment. And it protects the worker, adds Mrs. Joe, returning to the table. That was my contribution. The app guarantees a minimum hourly wage, accident insurance, and fair ratings. Henry listens fascinated as Marcus details how it works. It's an ambitious but well-thought-out project, something that could truly change the lives of thousands of informal workers, people like Mrs. Joe, who rely on informal networks to find work. We already have a working prototype, Marcus continues, pulling his phone from his pocket. Rodrigo helped me code it in my spare time. We're testing it with a small group, 10 housekeepers, 5 construction workers, 3 electricians. He shows the simple yet efficient interface, worker profiles with ratings, a scheduling system, secure payment through a digital wallet. It's brilliant, Henry praises sincerely. It has the potential to scale nationally. Marcus hesitates, again exchanging a look with his grandmother. That's the problem, sir. To scale, we need investment. Infrastructure, servers, a support team. He puts his phone away. I was going to ask for your help, but with everything happening at the company, Grandma told me about the problems with the board. Henry realizes that Mrs. Joe keeps him informed about the corporate situation. He is neither surprised nor bothered by it. The trust between them has evolved beyond an employer-employee relationship. It's true we're facing resistance, Henry admits, but that doesn't mean the project doesn't have merit. An idea begins to form in his mind, a solution that could solve several problems at once. Marcus, would you consider turning this into an independent startup? The young man frowns, confused. What do you mean? A separate company from Middleton, with initial investment from me personally. Henry leans forward, excited by the possibility. I could be an angel investor. You would be? The CEO. Mrs. Joe could oversee the social side, ensuring the app truly benefits the workers. Marcus seems stunned by the proposal. But sir, I'm still an intern. I don't know anything about running a company. You know more than you think, Henry counters. And what you don't know, you can learn. Just like you're learning to code. That night, they discuss the idea late. Maria and Peter fall asleep on the sofa, while the adults plan the future of the app, now christened Connect, a platform that would connect informal workers to dignified opportunities. When the family finally leaves, Henry realizes that, for the first time in years, he doesn't feel alone in his apartment. The voices, the laughter, even the cornbread crumbs on the kitchen table have given life to a space that had always been just a place to sleep. In the following days, Henry works on 2 fronts. At the company, he keeps up appearances, attending meetings, making routine decisions, avoiding direct conflict with Ferdinand and the board. In parallel, he structures the plan for Connect. He invites Rodrigo Bueno, the developer who helped Marcus to join as CTO. He finds a small but well-located office in Park Slope, near a subway station, to facilitate access for workers. He starts contacting investor friends who might be interested in the concept. The independent committee delivers its report on the Middleton Connects program, as expected, recommending its reduction and restructuring. Ferdinand Gaines looks triumphant at the meeting where the results are presented. The numbers don't lie, he declares, with poorly disguised satisfaction. The program in its current form is financially unsustainable. Henry accepts the conclusions without protest. To everyone's surprise, he agrees to the proposed restructuring. Sandra looks at him suspiciously, sensing that there's something more at play. At the end of the meeting, she approaches him in the hallway. What are you up to, Henry? It's not like you to accept defeat so easily. He smiles enigmatically. Who said I accepted defeat? That afternoon, Henry requests a private meeting with Edward Castillo. His godfather receives him at his home, a mansion in a wealthy suburb overlooking the city. At 72, Edward still maintains the impeccable posture and shrewd gaze that made him one of the most successful businessmen in the country. You surprised me today. Henry, Edward comments, pouring him a whiskey. You accepted the recommendations without arguing. Because I have a better proposal, Henry replies, direct as always. I'm listening. I want to buy your stake in Middleton Technologies. All of your shares. Edward nearly chokes on his drink. And why would I sell? The company is on the rise despite these. Recent detours, because I'll pay 20% above market value, and because deep down, you know my father wouldn't like the direction things are headed. He trusted you to support me. The mention of his father visibly affects Edward. He and Carlos Middleton had been like brothers since their college days. Your father was a pragmatic man, Henry. He wouldn't approve of this. Corporate sentimentalism. My father was, above all, a man who valued loyalty, and he dreamed of a better America, even if he didn't know how to contribute to it. Henry puts his glass on the table. You know it's true. Edward sighs deeply. Even if I consider it, why do you want my shares? You're already the largest individual shareholder. With your stake, I'll have a controlling interest. I'll be able to implement the vision I believe in, without having to convince skeptics at every step. The negotiation extends into the night. In the end, Edward agrees to sell not for the initially offered 20%, but for 15% above market value, with clauses that guarantee a board seat for a representative of his choice. I hope you know what you're doing, my boy, Edward says as they part. Your father built that company brick by brick, and I'm rebuilding it also brick by brick, only with a stronger foundation. The acquisition of Edward Castillo's shares causes a stir in the market and panic on the board. With a controlling interest, Henry now has the power to implement his vision without needing approval for every initiative. The first decision he makes is surprising. He announces his own temporary leave from the CEO position. I need time to dedicate to a personal project, he explains to the executive team. Sandra Miles will take over as interim CEO. I have full confidence in her ability. Ferdinand Gaines doesn't hide his satisfaction, interpreting the decision as a surrender. Sandra, now aware of Henry's plans, accepts the responsibility with determination. Don't worry, she tells him in private. I won't let them dismantle what you've built. Freed from the daily responsibilities of Middleton Technologies, Henry dives into the development of Connect. He turns his apartment into a makeshift operations center. Marcus practically moves in, working on the app's development day and night. Maria and Peter are also constant presences. The girl contributes surprisingly mature insights on usability. The boy, with his creativity, helps develop a gamification system that encourages both clients and workers to maintain a good reputation. Mrs. Joe coordinates contact with informal workers, organizing focus groups to test the app. Her life experience and connection to the community prove invaluable. The apartment, once cold and impersonal, is transformed. There are photos on the walls now. Not just diplomas and certifications, but real images of people. Henry's mother smiles from a frame in the living room. Mrs. Joe's son, in his construction uniform, looks on proudly from a bookshelf. There are drawings by Peter stuck to the fridge with colorful magnets. The kitchen becomes the center of the home. The aroma of home-cooked food replaces the smell of reheated coffee. There is laughter, discussions, life. In 3 months, Connect is ready for its official launch. Henry rents a space at the Impact Hub, a social innovation center in New York. He invites not only investors and journalists, but primarily the workers who participated in the testing. Housekeepers, construction workers, electricians, caregivers. The event is simple, without the usual luxury of Middleton Technologies launches. Marcus, nervous in his suit, presents the app with an eloquence that surprises everyone. He talks about dignity in informal work, about technology as a tool for inclusion, about building bridges between worlds that rarely meet. Mrs. Joe, elegant in a turquoise dress that Henry insisted on giving her, speaks next. Her voice, usually soft, gains strength as she shares her journey. I spent my whole life being invisible, she says, looking directly at the audience. Cleaning houses where people barely knew my name. Cooking meals I could never share. Existing only where I wasn't in the way. Her voice breaks briefly. This app isn't just technology. It's recognition. It's telling millions of workers like me that they matter. That their skills have value. That they deserve respect and dignified conditions. The applause is warm. The investors present seem genuinely touched. Journalists take notes furiously. When it's Henry's turn to speak, he is brief. Connect was born from a moment of clarity. A night when I finally saw what was right in front of me. He looks at Mrs. Joe with gratitude. A woman kneeling in my kitchen, eating leftovers in the blue light of the refrigerator, trying to be invisible. He pauses, letting the image sink in. That night, I started to see. Really see. And once you see, you can't pretend you haven't. The launch is a success. Connect receives coverage not only from tech media, but also from major news outlets that highlight its social aspect. In 1 week, more than 5,000 informal workers sign up. In a month, the number surpasses 20,000. Ferdinand Gaines is one of the first to download the app. He uses it to hire a housekeeper for his beach house in the Hamptons. Then an electrician. On the third use, he receives a notification. Congratulations! You have just directly contributed to the financial security of 3 families. One afternoon, he calls Henry. I didn't know you were behind this app, he says, in a tone that's hard to interpret. It's interesting. Thank you, Ferdinand, Henry replies without irony. That means a lot coming from you. An uncomfortable silence follows. Do you really believe this can work? A profitable business that also has a social impact? I don't just believe it, I'm proving it. We have 15% user base growth every week. And every worker on the platform has an average income increase of 30%. Another silence. I didn't understand what you were trying to do at Middleton, Ferdinand finally admits. I thought it was a phase, or worse, a marketing stunt. I know, Henry replies without resentment. And I understand why. I wouldn't have understood it myself a year ago. 6 months after the launch of Connect, Henry makes another surprising decision. He sells his luxury penthouse on Park Avenue. He buys a large but simple house in Park Slope, Brooklyn, a leafy neighborhood closer to Mrs. Joe's home. The house has a backyard, where Peter immediately installs a vegetable garden. It has enough rooms to accommodate frequent visits from Mrs. Joe's grandchildren. It has a spacious kitchen, which soon becomes the heart of the home. Mrs. Joe is no longer his housekeeper. She is the COO of Connect, Chief Operations Officer. She manages a team of 15 people and is respected for her practical wisdom and genuine connection with the platform's workers. Marcus, in addition to leading technical development, has returned to college. He studies computer science in the morning and works at the startup in the afternoon. He's developing a new module for the platform, focused on microloans for workers who want to expand their businesses. Maria, now 8, is on a full scholarship at a private school thanks to the program that survived at Middleton Technologies, despite attempts to dismantle it. She has already decided she wants to be a mathematician. Peter, at 11, won a regional science fair with his improved irrigation system. On a Sunday afternoon, they are all gathered in the backyard. Mrs. Joe is preparing a barbecue, helped by Marcus. Peter shows Henry how the garden is flourishing. Maria solves equations in her notebook, occasionally correcting the adults on some random topic. Henry watches the scene with a sense of fulfillment he never imagined possible. His phone rings. It's Sandra calling from Middleton Technologies with news about the company. The stock is high again. The social program is being gradually restored. Non-salaried employees are reporting greater satisfaction. When are you coming back? She asks. The board is starting to reconsider its position. Henry looks again at the backyard. At the family he has found, at the life he is building. I don't know, Sandra. I still have work to do here. After the call, Henry joins the others for lunch. The table is simple but beautiful, with an embroidered tablecloth and the best set of silverware. There's cornbread, coleslaw, rice, black-eyed peas. The smell is delicious. Mrs. Joe, dressed in casual clothes instead of her old uniform, smiles as she serves her host, now a friend, now almost family. I was thinking, sir, she says, sitting down as well, you still haven't seen Louisiana. We're planning to go for Mardi Gras. Would you like to come with us? Henry smiles. The idea of parades, jazz, Creole food, colors, and joy in a southern state he only knows from stories sounds strangely perfect. I'd love that, Mrs. Joe. He pauses. And I think it's about time you just called me Henry, don't you? She laughs, still a little uncomfortable with the idea. I'll try. But it's hard to change the habits of a lifetime. I know, Henry replies, looking around, at the simple but welcoming house, at the people who brought life to his once empty world. But it's worth a try. On the living room wall, a new photo was recently added. Henry, Mrs. Joe, Marcus, and the 2 little ones, all together at the Connect headquarters, on the day the platform reached 50,000 registered workers. They are all smiling, not at the camera, but at each other. In a frame next to it, simply mounted, is the sentence Mrs. Joe said that night that changed everything. We learn not to bother people, to exist only where we're not in the way. Below it, handwritten by Henry, until we decide to exist fully, occupying all the spaces we deserve. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Henry and Mrs. Joe has touched your hearts. To continue experiencing emotions like this, we have a special playlist with other narratives that explore personal transformations and discoveries of purpose. Find it by clicking here on the side. If this journey of recognition and genuine connection moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Every day we bring unique stories that remind us of the importance of truly seeing those who are right beside us. Share in the comments which moment in this story touched your heart the most. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you.